Check. All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 15 of My Little Town here at Jolt Radio, on Jolt Radio, at Jolt Radio. It's surpasses space and time. We're everywhere and nowhere and anywhere. I'm Yuval here with Yo Miami, and we have the pleasure today of sitting down with Alan Espino of Beat Culture Brewery and Kitchen, I guess is officially.
Yeah. Pleasure's mine. Thanks for having me.
It's indifferent. So I got to give a shout out as always up at the top to another one of our favorite breweries down here in Miami, J. Wakefield, for hooking us up with the 4-5 for the show. Today we're going to be checking out their TV rings. Go check it out, and then hop over to Beat Culture about 15 minutes away, and we're enjoying some of their goodies as well.
That's
what makes the world go round.
Yeah, I'm talking about Beat Culture, but
right, yeah. I knew it. Yeah, I didn't think you were talking about it. But I got a shot. I mean, just because the label's right in front of me, like, well, the milkshake, shake IPA that you guys do, and I love the colada from you guys. Colada research.
Thank you.
Actually, I don't drink coffee, so there's a lot of things that I've realized over the years that I'm more open to. I guess it's not that surprising, but I'm more open to trying in beer than like fruits, like. Yeah, someone asked me like, "Oh, like, have you ever tried a dragon fruit?" I'm like, "Yeah," and then beer.
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, that's not the same thing." I'm like, "Yeah, something else."
Yeah, I think it's fair. It's not something to be shot for.
Or guava, or mango, or I take it to the extreme. I think.
It's fair.
So. One thing I wanted to start with, so you're, like me, I think a rarity, which is, I guess we're making it less rare by virtue of being in the same room right now, but born and bred in Miami,
yep.
Born and raised, I guess I shouldn't bred, sounds like cattle, but around cattle, maybe.
Yeah, at least Northwest Dade used to have a ton of cattle.
Yeah, so Miami Springs, right?
Miami Springs, yeah, north of the airport, yeah. I grew up there, and also in the Keys, spent a lot of time in Long Key, mile marker 64, 66, that general area.
Cool. Yeah, I never spent a lot of time. I went to sea camp in 6th grade, and I remember very vividly, because I don't eat a lot of seafood anymore. We caught our own like squid, and then they cooked it up. Yeah, I don't know if it's still a thing, but
I don't know. It
was like an overnight thing, maybe, and they brought a bunch of 6th graders out. We swam with sharks in this little like lake pool, like with the tiger sharks, snark sharks, whatever, that are like on the bottom, and then they had us go wade.
Imagine it's Nerf sharks, because they put children to tiger sharks.
Well, I know it was two different, right? I know. I think Nurse was one. I forgot the other, but it was like two different ones, and they were like the bottom ones that don't come up, and they gave us boogie boards and whatever. But now I remember wading through like this creek, river, whatever the fuck, like with, I want to say, nets, and like catching squid, and then they like brought us to this big room, and then proceeded to like cook up, fry calamari, like, and that was my first time trying calamari. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of like chicken. I mean, I guess that's where I realized anything fried, breaded and fried, it's like, it's not that bad.
So those were your vacations when you were a kid?
No, it wasn't a vacation. That was like a school trip.
That sounds awesome.
That's
pretty great.
It was not the norm.
I had like Metro Zoo and like a
did that also in Seaquarium and whatever.
Yeah, that's pretty stellar.
Yeah.
But yes, born and bred, born and raised, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted to know, so you did you always go to FIU, or did you try, like, what was your, because, so a little bit of background context, so microbiologist, right? FIU. Your thesis was the science behind the metabolic activity in a glass of beer.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So was that through their like brewery program, or did that come later?
That predates their brewing program. This was 2007.
So you were like a pioneer.
Ooh, far from it. No. I started studying microbiology and just really was enamored with like the science behind all that. So we reached anaerobic respiration, which is a really pretentious way of saying fermentation.
Okay.
And the complexity of it all, the layers and the processes were outstanding. And the fact that it was a unicellular organism doing all these things that we could domesticate and train and then get different characters out of them and manipulate sounded really, really extraordinary.
But so did your interest from that come in through already having an interest in brewing and beer and all that, or was it, in other words, what came first, the biological chicken or
so no, I was making beer in college. Yeah, I wasn't old enough to drink it at the time either. Right. So it predates. It was almost serendipitously. I think it was right place, right time. I was studying something that I wanted to pursue. I figured, I'm gonna go to vet school, and when I come back, I'll open up a little beer bar. There's a place that used to be called Abraxas on the beach with Diego Yuson, and that place was just like, okay, if I do something at least so I could hearken to this obsession of mine, right. Let me at least open up a beer bar. And I guess that was a general idea.
So the idea was vet by day and beer bar, or it was just like, I'll get my veterinary degree, or not veterinary, but I guess microbiology in veterinary. It sounds like, I don't know. Yeah. Whatever.
You got the general idea, yeah. I'll do this. Obviously, that's what I'll do. You know, when somebody says, "What do you do for a living?" Right. And then also have this thing that I've been uncomfortably obsessed with for many years.
But it was something that you saw not as something that you would pursue as a career, but something that was like your passion, and I'll do it if I'm able to do it by the thing that lets me do it, like my career.
Exactly. The vehicle in order to get to to this bar, to this, the way of getting into the fringe of beer, if you will, right. would be just obviously to have a day job to fund it. But yeah, that's generally it. And I got like I said, emotionally beaten from the veterinary world. I personally never got used to having to euthanize animals, and losing a lot, meaning patients. You would lose patients right. at a rate in which I really wasn't comfortable with. It's a normal rate, but not something I particularly was able to. I'm a softie for animals, quite honestly.
Right.
It's something
which I would imagine a lot of people get into, and then it's like, oh, but that, like, yes, you save some animals, sure. you help animals, but that's not the biggest proportion of what you
exactly. It's like, if you like beer, great, but owning a brewery, yeah, the last thing you're worried about is really making beer, and that's a lot. If you like animals, that's good for you, but if you like studying for a long time and you like complexity and you like learning and you like down here, there was absolutely nothing. I have to go elsewhere, and I started jumping into the veterinary world and getting out of that in the infectious disease and human medicine world, right? So I was working in infectious disease and diagnostics for a large conglomerate, kind of working out the diagnostic protocols. So I was doing that for quite a bit. Congenital malformation, also arboviruses, any kind of pathogen that derives from mosquito-borne pathogens.
Oh, I was totally thinking like trees.
Yeah. No, actually nothing.
Like, you know, that whatever that thing that wiped out all the lime trees. Well, Arbor Day.
Yeah, I got you. So like Zika, chikungunya, right. dengue, all that stuff. Yeah, okay. And then all that started. I spent a good amount of time in South Africa, and that started with zoonotic diseases, studying that. So zoonotic diseases are diseases that start in, say, in cattle-borne, like tuberculosis, foot and mouth anthrax, and how they jump into other species. So like same thing as rabies, so like going into humans. So I did that quite a bit, research and also chemical mobilization all over South Africa to Namibia, Botswana, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, about 13 other countries that were just jumping around trying to get either samples, help diagnose, chemical mobilization, trying to get animals, track them, pick up cadavers. A little bit of everything.
this and that.
Oh, it was great. It was great. I loved it. I probably would have been able to stay longer, but you know, I didn't want my family to hate me.
So you had a family already? Well, your family.
Well,
your
yeah.
Parents and stuff.
Coming from a Cuban household, you always have a family.
Right.
Yeah. That's kind of how it is. You know how it is.
Yeah.
There's not look, Cuban households and Jewish households are very, very similar.
Yes,
they're pretty much the same. Yeah. Slightly apathetic father, incredibly emotional and overprotective mother. Obviously the youngest one of the family. That's me.
It's like the opposite end.
So yeah, they expected more from you. They expected less from me.
Exactly. I was also the oldest son, and then 2 younger sisters. So.
Oh man, yeah, you got the shit on the down.
But yeah, I feel like it's, you know, very loud dinner tables. You have to learn how to like fight to make your voice heard at an early stage, or like, you know, or just be like passive.
Yeah, I just didn't really care to talk. And they thought, what's wrong with him? Why are you not talking? Are you depressed?
Right.
Yeah. No, I just don't give a shit.
Right. Like I don't want to bring the level of energy I need to be able to like participate in this conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I don't think I've ever analyzed that until right now.
See, it's all about the little things here. Not my little son. So family brought you back, and then so at what point, like at what time period is that? But when you come back after all your worldly explorations?
Oh man, I went back as well. That was 2010. Yes, 2010. Yeah, that I went back and a buddy of mine met me there, and he's like, "Let's climb Kilimanjaro." I'm like, "Okay."
So you're just like down for whatever.
Man, let's do it. Yeah, and we did, and it was in a very Jewish moment, if you will, kind of climbing mountain. What am I going to do with my life?
Right.
Type of thing. And during that
there was a burning bush.
Yeah. So during that trip, I actually went on that trip. I was trying to isolate yeast strains. So I was trying to find a yeast strain that was that was growing or is growing in Kilimanjaro, which I did. So I was swabbing a bunch of trees on the way up, juniper bushes, anything that was fruit bearing. After a certain altitude, there's no more fruit bearing bushes, all kind of like desolate. So I did that in the beginning. I had petri dishes, and I can either confirm or deny that I was able to get it back. But see,
there's a possibility that some made its way back.
Yeah,
somehow
it was real,
unrelated to you.
Yeah, so somehow it ended up isolating it and identifying it, and it was a unique strain. And yeah, that was pretty cool. But yeah, the whole time, we're both feeding off each other. His name's Benny, old friend of mine. We went to kindergarten together, and we've been friends for a very long time. And then we're like kind of bouncing, doing these. You spend a lot of time. You have 6 days of trekking up a freaking mountain that it's cold and you're sweating, you're slightly dying, and then you talk about some heavy shit, spiritual and body, and what do you want to do with your life and all that stuff. So.
Like, where do we go from here? Like, we're doing this big, huge, life affirming and changing.
We're only going to the highest point in the African continent. It's not a big deal. So while it was easy for him. He runs marathons for fun. Me, I was like hammered shit the whole time, just exhausted and winded and taxed. And we were talking about what do you want to do and that, and then I said what I was thinking of doing. He's like, how much more complicated is it just to make the beer? Shit.
We're here collecting yeast.
Yeah, like, that's what I do. Can't you just manufacture instead of buying a bar and sell other people's? Just sell your own. Right. And yeah, I'm like, okay.
Right. And I mean, I guess because that was at a time where it wasn't really, especially in South Florida, it wasn't really. I mean, what, Funky maybe was around?
No. This was 10 years ago.
Boca was what, 2007?
Yeah, I don't.
Borderline.
Yeah.
I mean, there was Abbey was like the 90s.
Tank was. I'm sorry, not Tank. Excuse me, Titanic. Excuse me, definitely not Tank.
Yeah. No, but I was gonna say Titanic. And Abbey was, I think, mid 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were brewing at that.
Well, they've always been like contract brewers. But yeah, that's then. Yeah, okay. I guess I got a lot to learn, and then that's when the research started. And every time I would travel, I would still hit up breweries, even before this inception. And I would just see and kind of, even if it's for leisure, I'm sure you do the same thing. You've got to travel somewhere, even when you're not in work mode, you're still kind of work mode. You're still observing. You're taking out, like, I don't like that. Ooh, I like that. Even this cool texture or whatever. Like, it's just it's always on, and that's how it was for a long time. And then when I came back, I went to my brother. I'm like, look, this is what I want to do. There's none down here. So yeah, because we don't come from money, we had to source capital, and it was a series of finding investors, losing investors, finding a landlord dying, a series of that for many years. And then I went back to school, did a run in grad school, and then he ran for office, and then
I started your brother is a land use attorney.
Yeah, my brother's an attorney. Yeah, my brother's an attorney. Yeah.
So he had some insight to bring to the table.
Oh, tremendous!
It's not just like, he's like a repairman. You're like, I think I want to open a brewery.
No. So I guess my thing was to him was like, look, I want to do this.
Right.
And he's like, okay, I need more. I don't understand this industry.
Right.
Is it even viable? And then I did this was a while ago. This is back 2010. I did a research analysis of the whole market state of the state of Florida. Yeah. So I compared Texas, which was probably comparable to what the Florida market was in beer, at least a part of Texas, just so I could have a density representative sample.
Right.
So I did one of Texas, and I tried to do one comparable to Florida. I called breweries throughout all the state, asked what their staffing was, what their turn was, what their raw material procurement, everything, sale. So I analyzed, and I did this really big.
And they just gave it?
Yeah.
Oh, because you're like, oh, I'm doing a college paper. Or like, you just got it there, like, oh, sure, here. Here's all our.
Well, yeah, some people didn't want to share. Other, like, majority. It's just really the industry. It's a very supportive industry.
Right.
It's camaraderie, not competition.
Right.
So it's been, that was like the first tease of, wow, these people are really awesome.
Right.
And they're very giving with their time when they really don't have to.
Right.
Especially a random asshole calls in and say, give me all your business intelligence information.
Exactly, right.
Yeah. So yeah, they were really nice, and I did. I mean, that's what I did. I did research, and I composed the research into documents. So I did that for it, shared it with my brother, and he's like, okay, let's try to do it.
Right.
Because he knew that I really wanted to do this thing, and it was really all encapsulating every thought process. You know, the joke of what men think about sex every 7 seconds. This brewery was worse. It was like all the time,
right.
And I always try to everything just tied into it. It was really. I don't want to say obnoxious because I couldn't beat it out. I couldn't like run away from this thing. Maybe as much as I felt like I should, just so I could have a simpler, less stressed out, maybe just this pathway, right? That's maybe a little bit easier to cover, right? So yeah, and trying to find investors that's the least it's not pleasant. Doing the spiel over and over, any lead you have, doing that over and over and over, right. And yeah, you get good at the spiel, the elevator speech, and yeah, whenever like, hey, last minute, come meet me at this place. This guy, he's interested. Go every single possible lead. And some we had, then there were some issues with some of these investors that we lost their money. And after many years, we try to restructure, change the format, maybe something smaller, and then kind of reiterating that until we're like, all right, we need to figure this out. And then we did a friends and family capital call. Mm-hmm. And that's where all the money comes from. It's 24 friends and family that we chipped in the money, whatever we had, to try to make this thing.
Right.
And we got it all together, and they're like, can we do it with this? And I'm like, I'm sure as hell I'm going to try.
Well, that's what we have, so let's figure it out.
I'm not going to just leave it here.
Right.
So, yeah, and that's what we did.
Which is really, if you think about it, it's old-fashioned crowdsourcing, crowdfunding.
I know. Right? Yeah, I should have known better than to put it on like some kind of platform and get people's money.
Yeah.
But no, we did the friends and family, and we're a friends and family owned business. That's pretty much. These are friends that I've actually. The reason why we were able to fund it, I met all these guys at Abraxas, really. Friends of mine there, and went back when the beer community was just like tiny, and there used to be bottle shares and all that used to happen at that location, and we became friends, and then I became friends with his friend, who was Mike, became his friends, and then all of a sudden I'm getting invited to weddings and baby showers and whatever. And now we hang out on the weekends. So now we're also business partners. These are professionals, these are accountants, these are attorneys, these are very, very savvy people that are very smart, that I'm glad to call them friends, but also it's amazing to be able to start a business with them.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that I found also, like, from very early on in the craft beer industry, in the sense that for me it was more DRB, the first DRB, like by the Arts Center, where I met a lot of people that I used to,
Abraxas.
It's the one across from Sunset Place, right?
No, it used to be Cervezas, yeah, which I used to go there all the time, but Abraxas was on 4th and Meridian.
Okay, so I didn't go. So yeah, for me it was like DRB, like maybe, Zeke's.
Oh man, Zeke's was amazing. Was that $4 beers? Yeah. Oh my god, that place is extraordinary.
But DRB was somewhere where I met a lot of people that ended up, like a lot of the guys that I met there, like the owners and whatever, are like not here anymore, or like kind of like dispersed. But I met people who now are like reps for distributors or for breweries, and I feel like that's very much pervasive in the craft beer industry, in the craft beer world. This kind of gravitational force pull that people always they might hop around to different companies, different ends of the industry, but they always kind of stay kind of in orbit around kind of that central kind of.
Yeah, for sure. No, it definitely does. There's a level of interest, and for for if you're interested in the industry and you're really passionate about like the product, it's very easy to fall in love with the product because it's beer, it's alcohol. Like really, I totally get it. But once you kind of get that, whether it's the science behind it, whether it's the flavor, the complexity, it's the same thing as in food, right? It'll lead you down this path of I really want to get into this industry, and these are some really outstanding people that kind of they get attracted to this. So there's a joke of that. I guess there's a lot of truth to it. The craft beer industry is 99% asshole free, and it really is that way. So it's surrounded by a lot of really passionate people.
Proportion is shifting.
I don't know, man. Even then, there's still a lot of really extraordinary people that when you're used to what the standard is nowadays, the proportion is way extraordinary.
And I think especially if you're comparing to food and bev or
everything.
The nightlife industry in general.
Yeah, even outside of that, even if you go into like retail or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just it's substantial. It's come on, man. There's way better.
I guess I'm thinking of like whatever the craft equivalent is of any other industry, like compared to. I guess then you're just
maybe yeah. Food is not the same.
It's really enthusiasts, I guess.
Yeah. Look. Restaurants won't share equipment with other restaurants.
Right. Well, some like commissary more like.
Well, restaurants that aren't associated with each other, that are bound by square footage. Well, sure, but that's what we do, right? If we need hops, we need something. Hey, we have a bottler that you could use. So that's just the dynamic that we have with other breweries, and it's definitely different and incredibly rewarding when you're surrounded by these kind of people that are they're enamored with what they do. We're very lucky to be in the position that we're in, especially being able to execute something that you've been just obnoxiously fantasizing for so many years, and I think that's where we see eye to eye on a lot of things.
I think that's you say perfect, or you open my eyes to being able to name the phenomenon more. It's like nerd culture, where in the end, it's like whatever you're nerdy about, it could be craft beer, and that's the equivalent. I think is that there's this sense of like having had to like huddle against the masses or around the campfire and like the dark unknown like out there and like. Having gone through that as a shared experience, it's like that. Okay, like we're in this together, and like we're
also implementing a brewery is it's traumatizing, right? With construction and budget and all that, and the other people that go through it are like, I know, come on. You need a hug.
Especially if they've like made it through to the other side, like
exactly. So there's this I don't want to say brotherhood, but this kind of like camaraderie, this understanding that. Like we're all marching in the very same direction. We're definitely not competitors by any means, and the market is just so open. It's so underrepresented with good beer, especially down in South Florida, and it's very much a support system, which is phenomenal. Like Tripping Animals had an event. They invited us out there. Somebody needed to use our bottler. Take it. Like yes, let's do it. Let's do it all because it's a rising tide mentality, and it's really good people on the other side, to be honest.
Right. So I do want to talk a little bit about just to get more of a full view of the industry. The idea, like kind of the flip side of that, or because this is a conversation I have had recently, and so I want to get an insider perspective or weigh in on this in terms of. I take a pretty staunch position when it comes to, when people talk to me about Visa, and I'm like, that don't, like, not from the beer industry, I'm like, oh, yeah, they're fine, the place looks nice and everything, but, I don't go out of my way to support them necessarily. Like, the whole idea of, like, big beer and how that's factoring into the craft industry, and it's a convoluted conversation because you have the example of Sam Adams, which is they basically literally write the definition for what, like within a hair's breadth, of a degree, like what craft beer literally by definition is. So obviously as they grow, that definition has, changed and evolved and expanded, but for me personally, like the issue I've always taken, and again, I don't pretend to be an expert. I definitely think I'm a little more knowledgeable, at least, than Joe Schmo on the street who has no interest in craft beer aside from like, oh, what's your IPA, on tap or whatever. So the thing that I take issue with is things that I see as unnecessarily harsh and harmful tactics to win market share over craft breweries that in a free market would probably best them. So things like buying out lines and things that are illegal and that they've been, you know, fined for and you know, been you know, had issues because of. But even with that, you know, like, where's the line? Like, I have friends that work for, you know, work at Visa, and I like, you know, I will joke, like, I'll joke with them about it or whatever, but I'm like, they know I'm joking, and at the end of the day, like, I've told them straight, I'm like, listen, man, like, you gotta eat, like, everyone needs a paycheck, like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, don't go work for the man, you know, like, like, get that money, you know. So I don't know, where do you sit on that whole idea, or how does it affect you, or does it affect you, or is it something that you try to kind of like stay out of? Like, what, how does that like weigh in for you?
Oh, it's a very layered question. Right. So so how about this? So what Big Beer does, by Big Beer we're talking about, you know, your Corona, Coors, Miller, Bud, all that. They can't do what we do. Like, we crank out a unique beer every single week. We do mead. We do all, like, everything. We use local ingredients. We do local collaborations with local businesses, Baptist Hospital, Misha's Cupcakes, and Only in Date, all these things. We do. They can't do what we do.
But so, and just to pause you there, you're saying they can't do it. But again, if you have, for all intents and purposes, limitless means,
it's not worth their. My point is, it's not worth their time.
Exactly.
Because that's what I'm alluding to. It's not worth their time. What they spill in daily production is probably what we make in years of our production, right? So they're very good at making beer. They're very good at making the same systematic beer all the time. However, it's a non-impressive commoditized product that you probably can't tell it apart from Miller, Coors, but so with that in mind, by them getting involved into the craft beer industry, they're only taking away from their own commoditized product market share. So they're letting people know that you can make beer from mango, you can do a double dry hop, you can make a stout. And being that their marketing budget is, well, they have a marketing budget.
To start,
so because of that,
they have Super Bowl ad marketing budget.
Exactly. So they're promoting an industry that's eroding their main book of business, which is $6, 12 packs. Right. Which is these by the cases and bottle and all that. So the beer that we know that we see on the grocery stores, really. So that's where they really make all their money. They're in the game of volume. It takes the same amount of time to do 5 gallons as it is 5 million gallons. It's just a game of infrastructure, packaging, resources, everything else that comes with handling that kind of volume. So the fact that they're getting into the craft beer market, it's only acknowledging what we're doing is eroding their board of directors, these bunch of suits sitting around a table and saying, why haven't we grown this year?
Right.
We made this much money last year. I expect 10% growth or whatever percent growth the following year. And then they're like, okay, all right, spend money to fix it. And this is their attempts of spending money to fix it. So they want to open up small breweries throughout the country. Miami's a very unique example because even in Wynwood, we have AB InBev, we have Sam Adams, and then eventually, and also we have Craft Brewers Alliance, right? And then we have them. We also have them, and there's going to be an opening of a larger facility coming soon. Which again, we have 4 large entities. Meanwhile, there's only one original.
Shout out Jay Wakefield.
There's only one left, right? So I'm just showing you there is an attention from these monsters. We're talking about Heineken, Budweiser. These are big monoliths. We're talking about billions of dollars. The merger acquisition from Miller and SAB Miller and Budweiser several years ago, AB InBev was what, $107 billion merger. It's obscene. We're talking about monopoly violations, right?
Which weren't there.
Some could argue that there still is, but they have to divest certain brands, certain distribution. But these are and also we're not even getting into the violations that have happened with the ATF and paying off lines. It's also the distributors doing this. So it's there's a sexy side of beer, which is we make it on premise and people come and try it, and then there's the distribution side, which could be very rewarding, and for us it is very, very rewarding. We have a lot of awesome accounts, Kush, Boxelder, all these awesome really folks. union that the
trifecta.
Of course, no, and even then, and all the other folks that typically you wouldn't think would carry beer, like Arcade Odyssey and Ghetto, that they start carrying it, and you meet these people, and they're really excited about what you're doing, versus what these other monoliths are buying out. They're buying out Ale House, that they're selling, $5 pitchers. We can't compete with that. Like, go take over that. Take over that shelf space in Publix. That's not what we're doing. Or even gas stations. You're not going to find our beer in gas stations. So you guys do that. Meanwhile, you're going to be whether procuring other brands that make craft beer, or you're going to pretend to be a wolf in sheep's clothing type of thing and execute craft beer. All that's doing is it's really helping us.
Right.
That's all it's doing. And also, the people that work there are extraordinary. You mentioned Brotherhood. Everybody that I met from there, everything from Brandon and the front of house staff, they're amazing. Amazing people. So I'm not going to hold it against them at all by any means. But it's the strategy could be a little tasteless, and also the industry violations and things that come with compromising this 3-tiered system that we have in the state of Florida. It's not a fun conversation to have because it could get a little irritating.
To open a can of worms.
No, but it is a can of worms. But part of it is understanding the rest of this industry, because it's just about starting a brewery and then now go sell it, right? And there's everything else that comes with this model. So that's where it helps being a small brewery, small batch, and once we sell a certain amount, I can't sell anymore this week. Sorry, I can't distribute anymore. Then you have to wait until the next batch comes out, and then I'll call your name from the list. So that's where our model is a little different. Where most breweries, they feed distribution primarily, and then whatever's left over, they leave it out of their tasting room. So we're about 90% sales of our tasting room. 10% ish with a certain amount going to charity and events and all that kind of stuff goes out into distribution. And even then, like, I'll get you next week. Sorry.
Right. So I guess one question that I had that this is kind of a good segue for is, and I wrote down a quote that ties into what you just said, that you met. I forgot if it was on your site or on in a different in an article. You mentioned small batches over mass production, local over, I think it's on our website, local over imported, while maintaining our sense of responsibility to our community and environment. So I wrote that down because my question in response to that is, how do you balance that mentality? Because it's something that I very much identify with and relate to, not obviously beer production, but with, I think, more in terms of like cultural things in Miami. How do you balance that with a fiscal responsibility to these friends and family, stakeholders that you have in the business, in terms of saying at a certain point, do you need to think about how do we scale up? How do we take it like to the next level in terms of like the bottom line and
so it's really that the money and the investment came. They saw the viability of a brewery in the area, but they were more investing in me, my brother, and our head brewer Eric. That they thought that we could have run a successful business. So with that comes, they invested in us and in our idea. Our idea is obviously to promote and celebrate all things local, very much like you do, which I do appreciate. Art, music, comedy, all that, which I very much think there's a shortage of it. And by doing that same thing, but now turn it towards a brewery, which means we get our coffee locally, we get our chocolate locally, all our fruit comes from here. The reason why we can't buy hops and malted barley from Florida is because it just doesn't grow here. That's our model, always been our model, and it's viable, and it's one of those things. Mentioned big beer, they can't do this.
Right.
As much as they want to try, they don't know Ricardo from Cal or Paul from Perla, that when I say, hey, we need coffee or we need chocolate, here you go. And also just brings that much higher quality that it's one step so much further away from this commoditized, product that they make.
Right.
Really, really much on the other side. So that's what really separates us quite a bit from these large mass production. And even if you mentioned whether the responsibility to return money to them or reinvest, but that's really not what the investment was. The investment was, let's start this thing. That's the reason why culture is part of our name, and Beat Culture is let's try to start this movement, this awareness that there is a lot of really amazing things locally. You know more than I do, even that is, Miami is a very transient city, and it has an identity crisis, if you will. So we don't know what our local cuisine is really. It's pizza, ceviche, there's Cuban food. Right? I'm like, what is local? Like, what is an identifiable staple? Exactly.
Croquetas encoladas.
So yeah, that's very much part of it, but that's only identifiable for a certain amount of people. So like, what we know, New York has pizza. Right. We know there's like a certain. So it's Miami is kind of, we're on that direction to define what Miami's image and identity and culture and cuisine is. It's really important for me to want to do this as well. This is our backyard, and we grew up here, so I want to see good things here. I want to see this stuff, and that's partially why I really appreciate what you do as well, as because you could easily just not give a shit,
right?
But you clearly give a lot of shit, right? So so that's very much what we're trying to do here, and with that comes awareness. Then people, like, imagine once the first time you had a dry aged steak, there's no going back. Right, like the day you lose your virginity, there's no going back. It's like if there's an enlightenment period that it could be, it could be this way. Oh, all right. So and beer is very much the same thing. There's a very much educational process that we need to use good stuff. Without good beer, it's pointless exercise, to be honest. So we need to have good beer, thoughtful execution, good ingredients, and as local as very much possible. With the caveat that just there is an exorbitant talent in this city that they're really, really pleasurable to work with on top of that.
Some of them. A lot of them.
We've been lucky to see that.
But I think it's also, you have to, it takes one to know one, in a sense, where it's also like there's a lot of people in Miami that I think have by necessity developed a thick skin, and you have to be able to kind of give as good as you get. And like, I'm really not thinking of anyone in particular, but in general, like, honestly,
I'm sure you're not.
I promise, honestly, it's just a general thing that I think
we can talk about it off air. You seem a little emotional about it. We can let it go.
No, but I think it's true that and it always kind of, I kind of laugh it off at this point, but earlier on when I started, with Young Miami, so from like 2011 to 2014, let's say, in the earlier years, there would be a lot of this, like, this person's coming in from New York, and and they're gonna like revolutionize everything down here, and you guys don't know how we do it up there.
No, but that's our town, though. But that's our town. Miami doesn't give a shit about you.
Exactly, and that's what I came to realize over time is like. I've seen. I lost count of how many of those I've seen come and go. Dude, New York, Chicago, LA, from whatever.
It's extraordinary.
And
that's part of the charm. That's part of the fickle bitch that is Miami. That's what we know, right? That's what we grew up with. It's that pretty, beautiful specimen that has no problem like stabbing you in the back when she's bored with you.
Right.
Yeah, and you always have to keep her attention, and you have to do things well, thoughtful. But once you have her attention, she's going to treat you like royalty.
Exactly.
It's going to be amazing, and because the potential is here, right? I mean, I think we mentioned Blue Bottle Coffee, like mass. It just shows you like what happens. Like, it doesn't matter how much money you have when you come in here. You think you're going to own and dominate, but in reality, look, if you don't get it, everybody's going to see it, and you're synthetic. There's a layer, there's a veneer that you're trying to just capitalize on everybody, and that's what's one of my favorite things about the city, because Miami is a very, very easy place for people to shit on all the time, but they have no problem coming here and taking pictures and Wynwood and all that. Oh my God, I went to Miami. Yeah, but in reality is there's a strong sense of like this self that when you're kind of like superimposed, pseudo fake. Like what are you doing? No, not interested. And then you're gonna go up in smokes very, very quickly.
And I think it's also that's recognized and not accepted, but it's a known factor in Miami, where if you're from here and meaning when I say from here, born and raised, or if you've been here for 10 years or if you've been here for 5 years or whatever it is, if you consider yourself a local and are a local, like beyond the sense of like you have an address here, I think that that's part of Miami's not environment, a landscape, but that's kind of part of the charm, is that there's that, and you can choose to ignore it. And it's like, that's there because you have the tourists coming from Europe and South America and, New York and from wherever, and that's what they gravitate towards. But then, there's the spots, and that's the conversation I was having the other day, in the sense of, what my goal is with like YoSpace and all these changes that we're doing for the coming year. And, what I look at as role models, aside, there's the newer people coming up now that I might, look towards as like positive examples of like things to do or how to do things. But I think Churchill's, I think Max, I think, like that's, I'm like, I don't want to be the like the bright shiny like star on the block that's gonna like bring the latest, you know, war for Wynwood Yard crowds out like for 6 months to a year.
It makes money, right?
Right, and I guess that's the unfortunate reality of my position.
So everybody determines success very, very differently.
Right.
So if you're trying to, you know, get a little cash cow and milk it as fast as possible,
right,
with very low overhead, and just trying to capitalize on, then yeah, you could do that. You can do that here, and also Miami is one of the last lands of the hustler that you could start a business with just bootstrap and be able to implement it and execute it and do it. So that's part of the charm. But whether you're interested in, you know, contributing to this more thoughtful execution, you know, the arts, the science, the thoughtful, you know, or if you just want to just make a quick buck, there's an opportunity for both. Really.
Right. Yeah, that was a much more concise and eloquent way of saying it. It took me 5 minutes to dance around.
Are you guys hiring?
I don't think we can afford you. But so something else that I wanted to actually. So, okay, this ties into what we just talked about. So let's talk about that. How much of your strategy or the initiatives that you move forward with at the brewery, or which takes precedent, or what happens more often in terms of you thinking out what's the smart business decision versus what's like, oh, that needs to happen, like how do I make that happen?
What's the balance between both thoughts? Honestly, there's a lot of overlap there. Whether it needs to happen and it's a smart business.
I guess, do you find a way to make an idea that may sound crazy financially or viable, like a viable business decision, or are you like, okay, these are the steps I need to grow my business now, okay, where can I be creative within that?
So because this is not a typical business model, again, it's friends and family owning these things, and there's also, it's a craft beer brewery in Miami where there's underrepresented. So yeah, the structure that we take is not typical. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of books written that I could reference, and also in a market that's, right, as we just mentioned, is a little complex. So I guess one example is I guess the Iron Beer that we have coming out on Saturday, right? So we have Iron. There you go. So Iron Beer, I grew up with that. It's a Cuban staple. It's a story of back when Castro took power, they started nationalizing the organization. Bacardi is probably one of the most well-known institutions that got moved during that time. I should probably say that they exiled that time to avoid any kind of tumultuous situations. Another one of that was Iron Beer, which is not a beer. It is a soda. There's really nothing like it. You know, Coke tastes like Pepsi. Sprite tastes like 7-Up. There's really nothing quite like Iron Beer. It's spelled Iron Beer phonetically in English, but in Spanish it's pronounced Irumber. And this is it's one of those things that if you from Miami or you grew up with this Cuban upbringing, it's a very, very, very common thing. So I grew up with it in my fridge.
Very different than cerveza, so less confusion.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wish I was in that. It was 1920 or 1917 is when it was established. I would love to be in that round table saying, I want to call it Iron Beer. Wait, stay with me. It's a soda, but you know. Right. So it's a very amazing story, and I grew up with the product, growing up with it. You know, like you're like, oh, it's beer. Let's just drink beer as kids, but it's obviously it's a soda, and this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and partially because when you have a brewery, like you have a business, you want to do things that you feel are right, and this was one of these things that I really wanted to do for not only for myself, but I thought it would be a lot of fun. And that's where you mentioned trying to substantiate something that's kind of desire with a business model, and I wasn't sure if it was a viable business model, to be honest. I really didn't know. I just made sense to me. It made sense to the culture. It made sense to our business and everything that we should probably do this. And I cold called Iron Beer, the family. They responded, said, come hang out. I went over there with my brother and we talked a little bit, and they're amazing human beings. And they were extraordinary, very receptive to us. I think we hit it off extraordinary. And they loved the idea of making an alcoholic version of this soda staple that's been here for a long time. Again, another Miami brand. Right. That they are a craft soda maker. Right. When you think of craft soda in Miami, you get crickets. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's what you find in the hipster stores now, where it's like, well, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like pomegranate.
Yeah, or boilins,
sparkling.
but they're not from here.
Right.
They're not locally made. But yeah, that when you have a brand like that represents our culture, our city, all that. It was awesome. So yeah, and then we were able to. They loved the idea, and we were able to make a product that they very much gave their stamp of approval, able to make a packaging, the brand, label, the voice, execution, everything we made had their blessing. I very much wanted that.
Right.
For everything. It's their brand at the end of the day. We're just these new assholes that love what they do, and let's just take a little modern twist.
It's like a cover song, if you will.
That's very well put. Yeah, it's exactly that. It's a very different take, but I didn't want to make an alcoholic version of their soda. Right. I wanted to make a beer, iron beer.
That was.
It's very different.
That gives you a sense of nostalgia, and like if you grew up with that soda, yes. You're like, this reminds me of that.
Yes, 30 years later.
Right.
Yeah, this is you drinking what you were joking about as a kid. Right. So yeah, it's been incredibly rewarding. We haven't even released it yet, and it's been probably the most fun, most rewarding project I've had that we've done. Really. Fortunately, we have a really talented brewer that it was a challenge to say, all right, now make this into a beer.
Right.
Right. It's just imagine someone saying make Coke into a beer.
Right.
And yeah, he did it. Yeah, so as much as it's without there's a lot of ideas, right? Without being able to execute them, they're just dumb ideas.
Right.
So with having Eric as the head brewer, he was able to execute these things he was able to execute them, period.
Right.
And in a very tasteful way. So that's where it makes it all just so much more rewarding in the sense that we did it, type of thing. Right. So again, we haven't sold it yet. I don't know if we did it or not. I don't know.
Right. We'll see.
Saturday we released it. Yeah. So we decided to package it in 12-ounce bottles, kind of back in the day, like an homage to their old school packaging. 4-pack 12-ounce bottles. Yeah, we have a local designer named Jack that does all our labels. He did. It was really awesome. So awesome, another Miami guy. So hearkening to all that stuff, like we resonate a lot.
I have to say, because I had another one of these Miami craft beer, world stories. Like I ended up meeting him. You had told me all this about him at one point, whatever, when we first met, and ends up I'm sitting next to a guy at Box Elder, and however the conversation comes up, and he's like, oh, like I think he was talking about his wife. His wife also is like the illustrator, right?
Yeah. So him and his girlfriend do. They hand draw. Everything, right? And then
she do the colada like with the face.
Yeah. He did. Chismosa. Yeah, she's done chismosa. She did this guava pastelito, and then between the both of them, they actually
have the print at Box Elder. So he's like, oh yeah, no. And I'm like, oh, aren't you the guy that does all this stuff
really?
With Beat? Like,
the colada guy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's him. Yeah.
So, small one.
That's Jack. No, yeah, but to your point, yeah, but also he's a beer guy, which is even more amazing. So that's where we kind of crossed. I was actually following his career for a while before the brewery was even established, and trying to find somebody local and all that. And oddly enough, he was following our progress from like a distance. So we were kind of like observing each other from like afar, like two ships in the night, if you will. Then yeah, we kind of.
It's a good beer.
It is, isn't it? we almost like courted each other and like we need to work together, and he's awesome to work with. Yeah, so very talented guy. Sometimes we give him a really tight sandbox to play in. Sometimes it's just like, you don't know. Right. Please do something smart and pretty that we're dumb. But he always executes just phenomenally. So it's definitely, and again, another one of those pleasurable moments of having a business, being able to work with somebody like that, executes just such at a very, very high level. And it takes a lot of appreciation to his own work too.
Right. Yeah, and I think it goes back to the whole even like the peripheral craft beer scene in terms of like finding people that are like minded and that have kind of the same passion and kind of skin in the game as you in terms of like wanting.
But even the drinkers. Yeah, like the fact that bottle shares exist. Yeah. Like you could get invited. Like these are different professions. Right. Granted, it's probably going to be male dominated, right? Yes. but realistically, it's going to be really dynamic age crowd. Like even at our brewery, when you sit at the bar, you're going to see young female to older man, like that really dynamic. So you're going to see a good cross section, but they're all interested in this experience and also more about sharing a product than it is about like hoarding and keeping it to themselves. So like
little of both. But.
I mean, maybe, but at least like the culture that we've been involved in is like, I'd rather share this with you, and let's drink it together.
They have to hoard it first.
Yeah, they almost become like Jehovah's Witness of beer.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, I got this. I want to share it with you guys.
It is the best like analogy ever.
Yeah, which is just it's really awesome. And also like, look, all we're doing is making beer. We're not curing cancer or anything. And when you get that positive feedback from people,
it's like a microbiologist and a brewer.
Oh no, trust me. It would be a lot easier to fund a brewery. Yeah. So yeah, that's where it's again it's very rewarding in that sense that you get that kind of appreciation for, look, we're just making beer, and that kind of.
I think that's being dismissive of the fact that there is this element to beer, to spirits, to like, listen, it wasn't invented yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, it's been around humans for millennia, let's say. You know, there is something there that relates to the human spirit and to, you know, whatever. I think so. I think there should be a respect for it, and it should be done, you know, in a calculated and in a way, like, with intention, where it's meant to be shared by these Jehovah's Witnesses, so that there should be this sense of
it's no different from
special.
Food. It's no different from food, right? So thoughtful food, thoughtful execution, people are going to appreciate it, and that's the same take as beer, right? There's a time and place for, like, if you're going to be playing beer pong, like, you know, if you want to use our beer, great. But realistically, right, there's a time and place for McDonald's.
Exactly.
Right?
I was going to say Taco Bell, because if I can get them to sponsor something, that would be great.
Yeah, love Taco Bell. Love Taco Bell. Chicken chalupa, number 6.
Outside the bun.
Love that chicken chalupa. It's amazing, yeah.
We'll work on it a lot.
We'll work on it. We'll make it happen. But it's just to your point. There's a time and place for good beer, good food, good thoughts, and that's where, like, we mentioned about once you have like that really good steak, there's really no going back. And this is just a good example. It's like, what can beer be? Or that's when folks come to our brewery and they try this, like, oh my God, is this beer?
Right.
Like, yeah, it's mango and passion fruit, all, you know, fermented on it. It's a little different, but that's where you kind of break the mold for the folks who walk in and ask us if we make Stella.
Right.
So it's
funny because I hear that at brewery, like, you know, I work with a bunch of breweries, and it's like, I'll be at the bar, like, you know, if I have an event there, I'm there for 3 or 4 hours, and I'll see like, oh, like, you know, what do you have? Like, either they'll flat out, they'll be like, oh yeah, like, do you have like Corona or like whatever,
what
or
do you have
they'll
that's
be like,
light?
what do you have that's like a Heineken, or it's like, well, you know, I'll send you there, or, you know.
Yeah, but all that's opportunity for us.
Right, exactly.
Like, well, you're going to learn something today.
And I think that speaks to what you're saying, what you mentioned before about the big beer now getting into this because they have to, because craft beer was eating up their market share, is that their beer I see as becoming kind of the gateway beer for people, because they're seeing it everywhere. That gives them the opportunity to try something that's not a Heineken or a Stella, but the Heineken or Stella version of craft beer. And then that's like, oh, that's kind of already waking them up to the fact that there is something beyond that, you know.
Yep. On their marketing budget, and on, like, they're making it aware for us, right? And then the next thing is, okay, are there other places like this?
Exactly.
Yeah, and then that's always the next thought. And I'm not going to poo-poo them. They're eroding their own market share, to be honest. Just for the sake of us not letting us do it.
Right. It's like, very much, if you can't beat them, buy them.
Oh yeah. That's what has been happening across the country.
Okay, so we have to wrap up in a little bit. All right. I'm gonna end on this, and then we're gonna plug all the stuff that you have coming up, where people can find the beer and you guys and all that.
Okay. I should probably get my phone ready for that.
So yes, you should. So tomorrow, you get a call from John Schmann from ABV. All right, we really love what you guys are doing. Here's a check. There's no amount on it. We want to buy you.
All right, so
I feel like, because it's a loaded question, and I know there's no easy answer, and I'm like, I don't know what I would do in that position necessarily. Is there a non-compete? You know, can I take a chunk of that and then go open, you know, my own thing on the side? Like, there's a lot of variables, but I feel like that is a question that most brewers, meaning like brewery owners, need to like that's something they need to know. Is there a number, or is it like, oh no, I'm in it, like it's a principle thing and it's like whatever?
Yeah, so for me, it's being able to, it's like living out this fantasy that you've been fantasizing for a long time and dreaming for a long time, and really like selling that. What are you gonna do afterwards? Like it's just, there's been
well, you'll work there for a couple of years.
So because we have a lot of friends and family involved in this, it's actually in our bylaws that we have to really much vote on it. It's not just one person making an executive decision. So it's very much a group effort to make this transition. I'm not really worried about that. Like there's already an InBev presence here a lot. There's a lot of big players coming in. Heineken's coming in soon. All these big guys that they don't want you to think that they're big guys, but they're here already. So why are they going to want us?
Well, why do they want Wicked Wheat? Why do they want?
They don't have 3 breweries in North Carolina. So maybe it's so
you'll cross that bridge if and when you get there.
It's just realizing it's so out of left field that there's so much immediate things that I want to do, like that I very much want to do, not only on the beer side but also on the food side, an event and all that stuff that I'm not even entertaining the idea. Yeah.
Which we didn't get into, but you'll tell us where people can check you out. But you also, because you're all about all things fermentable, so it's beers, that's meads, that's ciders eventually, hot sauce,
yeah, we make our own hot sauce.
And then obviously you guys have a full kitchen over there at the brewery that I'll vouch for as being really amazing. So go check out Beat Culture Brewery and Kitchen over by the Days Inn off 836, right?
Yeah, 836, yeah. 72nd on the street.
And where can people find you if they're 21 or over?
Aside from the brewery, 90% of our beer is sold out of our brewery. So every Tuesday there's a new beer.
Online.
Oh, online? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting old. I don't know what this thing's anymore. So that's Beat Culture Co. Instagram, right? The next one is Facebook. Do the kids use Facebook?
I don't know. I do.
Okay. Oh yeah, because you're older than me.
Yeah.
So it's Beat Culture Brewery. The Twitter. We have something there.
Assuming the website has all of these.
Yeah, Beat Culture. Yeah, just Google Beat Culture.
Google it, guys.
You're gonna find it there. There's not a lot of breweries in South Florida. We're 13 for 3 million people. You're not gonna have a bad time in either one of those breweries. It's just with us, we're gonna do a little different. We do make mead. Hopefully, December we're gonna crank out with our sake. First commercially available sake in the state of Florida. Hopefully 3. Nice. We'll see. Don't hold me to that. Might be 2. And we'll accompany that with a nice yakitori style food. We have a really talented chef in the kitchen, Chef Jonathan, who allows us to be able to also have fun with food at the same time.
Nice.
Yeah. And also a few accounts out there: Boxeller, Union, Kush, Arcade Odyssey, lots more to come as we were growing and expanding. Tap 42 also has Chismosa and Melissa. Yeah, they're awesome people. The purchaser, everybody, just again, it's surrounded by really extraordinary folks that like what we do.
And then, can people find on your website like other locations where they can find?
No, all that is Instagram.
Okay.
Instagram is where you'll find all that.
All right, as always, I've been Yuval Ophir with Yo Miami. Alan, it's been truly a pleasure. And shout out to Jay Wakefield, shout out to John on the 1s and 2s. Chill Radio, Yuval, it's Yo Miami, yo-miami.com. Check us out actually for Que Bingo over at Beat Culture, first Tuesday every month with Danny Miami Reyes as Tio Pepe and Carmencita, his niece, rolling the balls. And come out, it's free to play, you win a bunch of great prizes, and yeah, check out their calendar of shit to do on a regular basis. And Saturday,
Iron beer. Eat 'em better. Take it.